What's up, guys? This is Jesse DeRozier with Hydrilla Gorilla Guide Service here on Lake Guntersville. Today's date is 10/17/2025, and this is what's on the deck. So this week we've continued to see water temperatures kind of holding in that upper 70-degree range. Early in the mornings I've seen it as low as 76, 77 degrees. In the afternoons been seeing more like that 78, sometimes 79. I've even seen 80 on a really warm day, but still kind of holding in that upper 70s for the most part. That said, the grass is still starting to thin out and hollow out nicely in that upper river section where there is some actual grass mats. That typically happens as that grass or the water temperatures finally get below the 80-degree mark, and the grass starts to be affected and starts to die, and kind of some of it will fall to the bottom of the lake, allowing for those holes and voids to kind of take place underneath those mats. That being the case, that's what Guntersville is known for fall fishing, and that's going to be basically that punch bite. Going out there, taking that 1.25 ounce weight, and punching in those Hydrilla, coontail, or milfoil mats. There's also sago pondweed that is growing in amongst all of this, especially along like the river channel ledges and things like that. Some of those thicker clumps you can also punch. The sago has thinned out quite a bit now, and you can probably drop through it with sometimes a 3/4 or even a 1 ounce weight, so you might not need as big of a weight to be able to get through some of that grass. I would recommend keeping that weight as light as possible so that when you do set the hook, that weight's not hitting the fish's mouth and blowing their mouth open, because the bigger weight that you've got, the more that's likely to happen. So try to keep it as light as you possibly can, where you're still kind of punching through that grass very cleanly. Next is going to be fishing those grass mats with a hollow belly frog. We're taking a SPRO frog, working these mats, especially now that we're seeing the holes and voids in the grass, where we're seeing these what'll look like blowholes, almost like a fish has come up and kind of knocked a hole through the mat. Taking and trying to skirt those frogs along the edges of those little holes, looking for those blow-ups around some of these voids, because if you're seeing that there's a hollow area up and underneath that specific area, which would allow for a fish to be able to be under there looking up. So those two techniques are definitely two of probably the most prominent fall patterns that people think of when they think of Guntersville fishing. Now that said, there's not a lot of grass this year, guys, just FYI. So if you're coming from up north, we have a lot of people travel in the fall, for fall fishing, wanting to come frog and punch. Just know that there's not that much grass this year. Kind of like that mid-lake section from below Goose Pond down to the 431 bridge. There's not much grass at all. There's a little bit down on that lower end, a little bit in all reds, maybe a little bit in browns, and a little bit in honeycomb, but the vast majority of what I would consider frogging water and punching water is going to be probably from Goose Pond going north all the way up until Crow Creek. Outside of that, pretty much we've basically been fishing grass flats, channel breaks, outside grass lines, hard spots, things like that. And we'll go ahead and get started now on the lure presentations that we've been using for those situations. The first and foremost this week for me that seemed to do probably the most bit of damage was throwing a little mini max chatterbait. So I got away from throwing that full-size chatterbait for the most part, just because we've been around a lot more threadfin. The more threadfin that I'm seeing, I'm going to downsize my baits, and I'm going to throw something small like the mini max. It's about 3.5 inches long. It's either a 3.25 or 3 inch, or 3.25 or 3.5 inch spunk shad trailer. Again, it's just a white or a pearl skirt, but adding something that's got that little hint of chartreuse, just like these threadfin got that chartreuse lateral line down the side of them. That's going to give it kind of that profile, and getting up and working around these areas where those threadfin are at, that's been doing really, really well. The next bait is my producer swim bait. The producer swim bait is a 3.5 inch. So again, trying to keep with that smaller profile, Swiminator in blue minnow. And I mean, you can see the teeth marks on this thing. It's been getting eaten. The eyes have been knocked out of it, the whole 9 yards. But it's more like my 4-wheel drive. With that being completely weedless, I can throw this through the thickest of grass. It's going to come through clean. It's got a little bit of a flashy blade on it, so that's the Flashy Swimmer owner hook with a 1/4 ounce weight 5/0 if you're looking to find that hook to pair with that specific swim bait. So that is again a 3.5 inch producer Swiminator in blue minnow. The next bait is also an underspin. So that underspin is going to be the Dirty Jigs lead head. If you notice, the paint is missing off of that head. This one I'm getting all the way down and I'm rutting it into the bottom. So I'm not looking for this blade to really get down there and spin. If anything, it's just kind of getting down there and just kind of getting kicked around underneath the bait, just knocking around the shells or rocks or whatever it is, because that's where I'm throwing that, is going to be on those hard surface areas. Now the one thing that I will tell you is anytime I'm throwing a soft plastic, especially something that's going to a lead head, I make sure that I'm gluing that on with the Avid Angler Solutions fishing glue. If you don't, a lot of times you're going to get 1 to 3 fish maybe out of a soft plastic. If you take a drop of glue, you're going to end up catching 9, 10, sometimes 15 or 20 fish off of one soft plastic just by adding that. And if you don't, I promise you're going to cost yourself a lot more money just in having to replace your soft plastics. So that's one definite thing that I would make sure that I've got added to the front deck of my boat. Next is going to be my topwater baits. So this week I threw 2 different ones. So I threw this little 3-inch Heddon spitting image, and that's an old school bait. It's been out for a long time. That one's the old Signature series by Bill Dance. I mean, that thing's probably 25, almost 30 years old. They still do make those. I thought originally that they had stopped making those, but apparently they still do make them. The colors have been tweaked a little bit. They're not the originals, but they are still available. The next bait is the Shower Blows by Evergreen. This is the smaller version. Again, trying to keep with that smaller profile. This bait I stuck with chrome this week instead of the bone or painted sides or anything like that. With the high bluebird skies that we had and the wind, I just stuck with a straight chrome on that one. That bait will throw like a missile. It's weighted so good at the back end that even though it's windy, you can throw that thing a country mile with no problem, and it walks beautifully. So if you've never thrown one, that's definitely a great walking bait. The next bait, again, something that you can throw really, really well into the wind, is going to be a lipless crankbait. Again, kind of sticking with that thread fin kind of look to it. Again, chrome, flashy sides with those high bluebird skies that we had. Anytime I'm fishing in the fall, I don't care what lake I'm on, I will always have a rattle trap on the deck in the fall. Next is going to be a square bill. So the square bill this week, I was throwing in a little bit cleaner areas. The areas that had thicker grass, I've been going with the swim bait, the chatterbait, or the underspin. So trying to be able to find something else that had a little bit different look or presentation to it. We pulled out the square bill this week and really put this one to work. They were eating it really, really well, but it had to be in an area, again, that did not have a lot of clumpy grass, because if we were around the grass, it would get wedged right there every single time. And then once it got wedged there, it seemed like the hooks would grab it too, and you'd end up with a big wad of grass on there. So make sure that if you do throw a square bill, don't frustrate yourself trying to throw it in an area that has too much grass. Make sure that it's either really sparse or submerged deep enough that you're not actually getting into it with the bait. Next is something that we've had a lot of fun with this week. We've had quite a few doubles in the process. and that is throwing a super fluke with a little bit of a tweak. So we're throwing a double fluke rig, also known as a donkey rig. So you notice I've got that with a 3-way swivel, and you can do this if you don't have a 3-way swivel or can't find them. You can do it with 2 individual swivels. Basically, you would just feed one swivel on your line through with one of the eyelets of the swivel, put a bead on there, tie your next swivel on, and then do a leader off of that one to a hook, and then off the one that's sliding, do a leader with a hook. And then when you tie them, you want to make sure that when it's hanging, that the tail of the upper one is barely right at the head of the other one. It could be a little higher, or I wouldn't go too much lower. You don't want it interfering really with this one. So maybe half an inch or 3/4 of an inch touching the bottom one, but not much more than that. I would definitely try to keep that as clean as possible. So the way to keep those separated, there's a couple of options. You can use 2 different weight hooks, so a lighter wire versus a heavier wire. The heavier one, obviously tie on your one that you plan on being on the bottom, which will typically for me be my longer one. The upper one, I'm going to tie a lighter wire hook so that it doesn't weigh as much, and when these are falling, this one's going to fall just a hair more and keep them separated. The other thing that you could do is do heavier line. If you're doing both fluoro, do like a 10 and a 12 or a 12 and a 15, and again, you're going to be able to keep those separated. The last thing that I would do is do a fluoro on my bottom and a mono on my top. The mono is going to float and help it, to separate and stay up. So, or you can do all of those if you wanted to. You could do a lighter wire hook with monofilament and a little bit lighter line. That'd be your top one, and then the opposite with your bottom. But either way, you want that to have just a little bit of separation so that when it's working and you're twitching that bait, you work it just like you would a standard super fluke. But when you're twitching it, those baits will crisscross and really zigzag all over the place. And they've got like a little cat and mouse kind of chasing thing going on, and it is unbelievable the amount of action that you'll get from the bass coming up chasing it. And when you hook up with one and you set the hook, a lot of times that fish takes off, and you'll see in the fall time a lot of times 2 and 3 fish following the fish that you have hooked up coming in. Well, now you've got this extra bait dangling back there behind this fish, and with it kind of chasing the fish that's hooked, another one will run up and grab it, and when he grabs it and turns, he'll hook himself. That's why I like the 3-way swivel a little bit better than the sliding, because when they do turn, it eventually just runs out of line and sets itself. The one that, it can slide up the line a little bit, which may prevent you from getting as good of a hook set, into that second one when they turn. But 3-way swivels, might not be readily available everywhere, that you're at. Not everybody carries them. But dynamite way to go. The next bait this week was just a jig head minnow. So this is the Cheetah by Producer Swimbaits. It's like a wing style jig head minnow, and he came out with this a couple weeks ago, just released it. Very similar profile to like the freeloader, except it's got the wings on it. And that bait had put quite a few fish in a boat for us today. The benefit of it versus the fluke is I'm not looking at throwing that with, I guess, specifically scoping, like looking at the fish and trying to throw to one. What we're doing basically is still kind of getting around these groups of fish, these schools of fish. We know they're in the area, we're just throwing it out there and just working it, and these fish are still creaming this thing. So basically what I'm saying is you can work areas that are a little bit deeper than you can with the fluke. And the fluke, we're in areas that are, say, 3.5, 4 feet deep. Well, with the jig head minnow, that's where we're getting out into those 5 to say 9 foot of water areas, and we're able to get that down and kind of work through the mid-water column and be able to get those fish to come up, or if they're glued right down to the bottom, and get those with the jig head minnow that we can't get with the fluke. Last bait, I don't typically keep tied on a rod, and that's the reason why you see me with this just in my hand. It's going to be the bull wake. I don't put this in my rod box when I put it away. I cut this off, put it back in a protected case, just because that's an expensive bait and I don't want to snap the bill on it. But the bull wake right now is dynamite. They are eating a lot of those 6-inch gizzard shad. There's groups of them running around and that are like 4 to 5 foot around circles, and you'll see them. You know, there might be, I don't know, 75 to 100 little gizzards in the group basically, and that's what you're representing with this, is those ones that are getting up onto those flats and just running around, scurrying around up there. That bull wake, and get up there and crawl this up over the tops of those little grass clumps. You'll be amazed at the fish that you can get, the quality of bites that you'll get. It's not a bait that you're going to get a ton of bites on, but the quality bites are definitely what you're looking for with this bait. Bone is going to be the color that I would recommend right now. The springtime, I really like the bull gill as well as the gizzard shad wake colors. Right now in the fall, just like we throw bone with the spooks, bone is just a color that works really, really well in the fall, and it works really, really well with the bull wake as well. So if you're going to be throwing one right now, that would be my nod. If you're looking for the, you know, get a specific color for the fall. If not, and you already have one, you know, the gizzard shad color will absolutely work. So don't be afraid to throw it. But guys, that's pretty much it for this week. I would say that, again, a lot of these fish are running around and they're so keyed on the bait that they are feeding on, that they're seeing so much of it right now that it's going to be hard sometimes to get them to commit to a lure getting into that school of bait. Definitely put the odds in your favor. Add a little bit of scent to your bait. Put some Thump Gel on there. It will make a difference in how many fish that you put in the boat for the day. So that just being a little bit of a recommendation to try to help you guys putting more numbers of fish in the boat. It will make that big of a difference by the end of the day. But that's pretty much it. I hope this information helps you out, guys, going into next week. Hope to see you out on the water, and until next week, tight lines.